Hello Internet, thanks for clicking today. I have this quick video for you today. Anytime I learn something neat in Blender, even just if it's a simple little trick, I think, oh, that's amazing. I'm glad I know this now. And then I go on some sort of hiatus for like a week, a month, half a year, and I can't remember by the time I get back. There are so many times I've told myself I need to make a video on using the NLA editor or how to do this cool like fire effect or things like that, and I think like, no, I learned it this time, I got it, I'll remember next time, and I don't. But I learned something today. It is so simple, so I'm going to try and just make a quick tutorial, if anything, for myself, but I feel like a few other people out there might like this too. So I am here in Blender 2.78. I don't know if this is going to change at all in later versions. I just learned this today. I should have found out who I learned it from, but I was looking at videos on how drivers work inside Blender and using my brain, kind of weird. I found a different application to use this. As we know a lot in Blender, if you are to, let me just set up a lock scale on this, except maybe if I spell it right for my keyframes. If let's make this a little bit easier to understand here. I'm going to zoom in, maybe go into orthographic so I can move better. If I put a keyframe here on frame 1, and then I try and rotate this, let's say I am rotating it, and down here at the very bottom left, my webcam is actually in the way, you can see the percentage, not percentage, the degree that I am rotating it here. I'll open this up so you can see it better. So here's my rotations, and as I rotate this, you can see what degree I have on the x-axis there. And if I were to rotate this just a full 360 degrees, it would actually help if I moved the keyframes along. So let's go to frame like 30, and I rotate this 360 degrees along the x-axis. I'm sure many of you already know where I'm going with this. Right about there. I don't know if it has to be exact or not for this demonstration, but there it is, exact. 360 degrees, and I hit keyframe. I go back to frame 1, hit play. It worked. It worked. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. In any instance before that I have done, let's do more than 360. Let's just go crazy with this. In most instances with Blender, I'm not able to rotate more than 180 degrees. See, you can see here that didn't spin as much as I thought it would, and it spun backwards. Basically, all I'm trying to say here is that rotations in Blender get a little confusing, and from what I've heard before is that is because Blender tries to find the quickest path from point A to point B. And when you're thinking about that sort of way that it works with rotations, it gets a little confusing. And so it'll see that this object is rotated many times, but it doesn't necessarily think about how many times it's rotated to get there. It just thinks like, oh, this is the starting position and this is the ending position, and let me find the quickest way to get there. I am surprised at how much it did rotate, but it did rotate in the wrong direction, so that's good to know. And I found today using drivers that you can change this. So I'm going to just make a new object here. I'll do another cube, and for the most part, I think when I run into this problem, it is with some sort of like propeller or spinning top kind of object. I need to reorient my default scene to be facing a different direction. So anyway, I'm going to make a little propeller as best as I can. It's not perfect. That is not a perfect propeller, but that is perfectly fine. And I think I got that midpoint pretty well there. Good to go. And so I would have this in the background, or for me personally, I like doing stuff with hover bikes. And so I would have this like little propeller on the back of some like steampunk little hover bike kind of thing. And I would have it rotating, and obviously it would rotate slower at slower speeds, faster at faster speeds, and I was trying to do the math in my head like, okay, I want it to spin 400 times over the next minute. I need to make that, and trying to figure out like what speed I want it and how to change the speeds. It's very difficult. And then on top of that, this problem where it starts spinning the wrong directions, or because a lot of time, like, I'll do multiple keyframes to try and get it to work. It'll spin one direction for a little while and then suddenly spin the other direction. It's not consistent and it's frustrating to handle. And so, sorry about the long introduction to all this. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to add another cube and just put it back here for now. This cube is not going to be shown in the render, so before I forget, go over to the panel over here and take it away from the render so that I know that I don't have to worry about that being seen. And I'm not entirely certain if when you do that, when you take something away from the render, if that counts for its shadows, but I would take away the shadows too in that case. And so then what I would do is I'll need to keep this in window open. I'm going to open this up over here, go to the graph editor, and go to drivers. This is where I normally go to make facial shape key animations. And with Blender 2.7, it recently changed something in it to where it works a little bit differently, and I'm trying to learn how to do that, but that's how I came across this video on how to do this. I'm going to go up to the rotation on my fan blade, and it's rotating along the x-axis right now, so I'm going to right click on the X rotation and hit add drivers. And from the tutorial I was watching, there was no other buttons other than just that add driver button, and it worked. But it seems like I'm going to go to manually create later single, because I'm not going to be going along any of the other axes here. I think the other one will do all axes at the same time. And so in this driver menu, I am going to let's see, get that in panel open. I'm going to click on the X Euler rotation. I don't fully understand how this all works. I'm just trying to, follow some steps. From what I've heard is that these drivers work better when you actually save the project, so I'm going to get this started and then save, even though it's just a dumb file. For example, I'm going to go over here to drivers along the in panel inside the drivers menu, and usually for the facial shape keys I've always worked with average value, but the video I was watching says to stay in scripted expression. And I'm going to set the object to be cube.101, which is this one back here, and we are going to modify it using the X space of the cube here. Is it the X space? Let's switch this over. It is the X space. I should just have both of these on at the same time. There we go. And so that is the X space. I'm still waiting to learn the difference between world space and local space. Transform space, I think I have an understanding of it, but I'm just going to leave it on world for right now because that's what worked for me. I'm going to try local, because local usually means like no matter where you put this, if I were to parent this cube into like another empty that's following a character around, I think local is probably the best way to go. So it's only thinking about its own position and relative to itself. I don't know if that made any sense. Next up, so we're at the drivers. I'm going to switch this expression. I learned that you can type in numbers here, but I'm just going to change it to VAR, which is basically the name of this variable right here. I could change the name of this variable and then type that in up there, but it defaultly names it variable, or just var, and so I typed that in up there. And so from there, let me test and see if that works already. Yes, it does. So I guess I don't have to save the file right now. I'm going to scoot this over here, and you will notice that as I drag the cube along the x-axis now, that fan blade moves. And so with this, I can better control the speed of the rotation and what direction it's actually going. So I can put a keyframe on frame 1 for this cube here. Let's make this like a 30-second animation, and frame 1, cube is here. And then go to frame 29 and do GX and move it along the x-axis, say 20 spaces. I want to go the other way, so I'm going to hit the negative key. And then that went all the way over there. So then I will put a keyframe there on frame 29. Frame 30, I'm going to do GX and not negative space, do 20 again to put it back into its original position that I had it. And now suddenly, when I play this animation, the cube is just going back and forth right here, because obviously I don't want it to go off into infinite space to where I can't find it in my file anymore. But if I am to hide the cube, this fan here is spinning at a constant speed, It wasn't that hard to set up, and if I want to, I can change the speed, I can animate it to stop when I want it, and I can control it much more precise than I would before. So I'm going to go ahead and unhide that cube, and let's get rid of the frames on that. Let's just do that through the dope sheet again. I apologize that my webcam is in the way. I'm kind of new to this webcam stuff. So delete keyframes. And so an Alt-G, put that back where it goes. This also opens up some other options. Being that I can control this, change the speed of it, be more precise. You can, if you wanted to, say you had a character. First thing that comes to my mind, probably because I do more like anime Blender type of stuff I'm trying to learn. What if someone, say, had like a barrette in their hair or something, and it just had a propeller on it that just spun all the time? You could actually parent this cube to the rig of the character, or say an empty that's following the character around, and that way it's more convenient for you to find this thing, keep track of it and what it's doing. As well as another time I remember really having this problem was with a character. I wanted him to do a spinning attack where he held his weapons out to the side and spun around with it. And so for that, I'm going to actually get out this guy that I made just a moment ago. And I don't like how he's hard to see, so I'm just going to quickly give him this shadeless thing here. And he's still hard to see for some reason. Is it my lighting? Just put that up there. And so let's put him where the propeller is, and let's do this. Let's say the propeller is the gears are turning here. You know what? Let's just set it up one more time. So this is my character, and spinning attacks is not something that he does all the time. And so I'm going to make another cube here, just to make this a little bit simpler. And I am going to change its Z rotation with the other cube over there. So I'm going to add a driver, manually create later. Going to go over here, going to change the expression to just variable, and it's going to be the Z rotation right there. And I'm going to change it back to local space. The other object is going to be the cube.101. I have no idea where it went, so I'm going to go back to world space. Oh, there it is. Now that I know where it is, go back to local space, put this back where it goes. And now as I move this around, or I think I have it backwards in my head, I apologize. So this is still doing the X location. The X location, right there. There we go. And because the driver is the one that I chose, there we go. So now as I move this around, you can see that this cube is spinning. And again, these don't have to be shown up in the scene at all. I can remove them both from the scene to where you can't see them. And it gets to the point in the animation where I need my character to do this spinning attack. And what I would do is I would put him in the pose of this spinning attack and put him where he needs to go. And then while the character is selected, I'm going to go to the Constraints tab, do a child of constraint to the cube, hit set inverse so that it's in the right spot. And now when I move this cube around the controlling one, it will actually spin him around to do the spinning attack. And when I'm done, you can actually animate this influence bar right here, so that before he needs to do the spinning attack, the influence is all the way at 0, and I put a keyframe on it just like this. And then a few frames later, or just at a different point in time, I can actually put the influence back up. I usually recommend flipping between 0 and 1 within one keyframe, so there's not this weird glide in between, and then you just animate that again. And then when he's done doing his spinning attack, and you get done animating that as you wish, you would put another animation on the 1, go to the next frame, put it back at 0, and do that again, and then continue your animation as normal. Once you've gotten past that part of the scene, or once you've rendered it out, you can completely delete this constraint if you want, or you can even just hide it so you know it's not there very much. You can give a good name just like that spinning attack. and then just kind of forget about it until it's needed, and that way it's not in your way too much. And that's all I had to say today. So like I said, this tutorial is mostly for me in the future, but I hope some of you got something out of it too. Again, thanks for clicking today. Let me know in the comments if you can think of another use for this. I'm always open to trying to figure out how to do other stuff in Blender. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.